What's going on, everybody? Rob here, aka Trev2323. That's TREV2323. Subscribe, like, and share. Today I am going over air compressors and why you should not go out willy-nilly if you want to buy your first air compressor and buy a cheap inferior air compressor. It's better off to save your money and get a big air compressor. Like boaters say, you get 2-foot-itis where you want your boat and every year you want 2 feet bigger. It's kind of the same thing with the air compressor. You might as well make sure your electricity can handle a 220 volt 60 gallon. And if you're a hobbyist wanting to expand your hobbies, you have it there instead of having the headaches of inferior air compressors. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what makes the air compressor inferior. And I have some of the smaller Harbor Freight air compressors, and I have a Craftsman air compressor, old school Craftsman. It's pretty cool, one of the features it has on it. And then also I have the big 220 one that's not even hooked up yet, which is the one that I should have just saved my money for in the first place. If we just jump right into it, a lot of the tools you need is cubic feet per minute, is how much air a compressor can get there in a cubic feet per minute. But not only that, how much pressure that compressor can maintain, how much pounds that force is coming through that airline hose. And one of the things with airline hoses is a lot of people don't know. Well, they figure, well, I could get a 3-gallon air compressor and run the hose to the front of my house and the back of my house and get the same pounds of pressure. That is not going to happen. And with every compressor I have in here, you're going to have such a drop in airline that you're not even going to get lug nuts off of your car or your grinders, and that's it. So with all these compressors, if you're going to be using constant air tools like a DA sander right here, or this is even a little grinding wheel. That's all this is a grinding wheel, or the spray guns. I don't even have all the spray guns here, or the spray guns to paint. I got this, and I got a Campbell hash wheel to get my bliss this year. But they use constant air, and they need constant, like a spray gun needs 30 to 50 pounds of constant air pressure. And if you're running a little 3-gallon compressor like these 3 gallons right here, that's not going to give you what you need. I will tell you this, that little 29-gallon Harbor Freight with a 29-gallon Harbor Freight gun, you can panel paint your car with an HVLP on a panel, because I did the hood of my van. Look at the other videos on the hood of my van, but I was running water-based paint. What's that? Paint shop paint. I was running paint shop paint. Paint shop paint will give you the color, but let me tell you this, you're going to need like 15 coats of gloss to get that to work. So I'm not going to use that line anymore. But let me show you the difference in these air compressors. And it's about this cylinder head, this piston head, and the size of the motor, really, compared to the inferior ones. And this one is really going to make your eyes open. Okay, now these are both supposedly, this is 115 psi and this is 125 psi. This is a Harbor Freight and this is a Craftsman. Both of them are 3-gallon air compressors. All right, now let me show you the difference in the 3-gallon. Yeah, I talk about cylinder heads. This is the cylinder head. There's a piston in here that's going up and down, which is creating the air pressure to go into here. See this? Look at this piston. This is going like this, and this is going like this. Okay, so that's what's creating your air pressure. So if you look at an inferior air compressor, look at the size of that cylinder head compared to the size of that cylinder head. That's what's creating your air pressure, okay? Now, how inferior or cheaper air compressors try to compensate to say that they get the same amount of air pressure that the better air compressors have is this motor, that this little chintzy motor tries to run at twice the speed of a bigger motor. See the motor size? Motor size. Motor size. Motor size. So that air compressor is stated to do 10 pounds less than this air compressor. Okay, this 3-gallon little Harbor Freight that you want and say, oh man, I'm gonna get my first air compressor, you pick it up for $59 to $89 or whatever, you can't even fill up a whole tire. this compressor will literally stop, and you have to re-plug it in and wait 5 minutes to fill up with air before you can refill a tire. But I will tell you this, you can shoot 5 brads with it if you need brads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this Craftsman one right here, 3 gallon, you could probably get 20 nails out of the brad nailer before you have. Okay. Also, that Craftsman will fill up twice as fast as the Harbor Freight. I mean, that Craftsman fills up super fast compared to that little Harbor Freight. Okay. Now this is a construction nailer right here. This is a construction nail gun. If you don't have 90 pounds running to this construction nail gun and you're shooting a 2.5 inch to 3 inch nail, the nail's not going to go all the way in. You're still going to need your hammer, but just not have to hammer as much. Now a cheaper inferior one that states it'll give you 90 psi. Let me even see what on the side of it says. This one right here says at 90 psi you got 0.6 CFM. So it does say it'll give you the 90 psi. This one right here will hit 1 nail all the way in, maybe 1 nail all the way in on a construction nailer. I mean, look at that little cylinder head compared to this one right here. Now this one right here will actually give you 1 to 2 nails in, and then it'll kick on. Because 90 psi, a construction nail gun, which is that one, compared to a brad nail gun, uses a lot different psi. Now this one right here needs 55 to 95 psi operating pressure. Okay, so 55 psi is not a lot. A 90 psi is probably the biggest nail, and you can hit a couple of them. It needs 90 psi to hit 1 nail with that gun right there. So I could probably hit 1 or 2 with this one and it'll kick on. I could hit maybe half to 1 with this one and it'll kick on. And let's get to this one. This is a 29 gallon Harbor Freight tool. Now you see on this one, it got bigger coolant fins on the cylinder head, but the cylinder head is maybe only a 1/4 inch wider than this one right here. This is a Craftsman. This cylinder head, this has smaller fins, and this cylinder head is almost as big as this Harbor Freight cylinder head, but this one has bigger fins on it. But I will tell you this, this motor right here, you see, is almost exact same size as this motor right here. This motor right here is a champ. This little thing is a beast. Now this one right here is what I just painted all this with a HVLP. I painted all this with a HVLP with this one right here. But this one right here had to kick on so many times I had a headache. I mean, this had to kick on so many times I had a headache. But it will get the job done. And with the spray gun, which is right there, and with this 29 gallon, as long as this sucker's far away from you, because you will hear it running, I did paint a panel on my van. I painted the hood of my van with this one right here with this 29 gallon. Now one neat thing that this Craftsman has on it, which is pretty cool, a lot of people don't know, when you're creating air, that's why if you see on my Sandblaster, I'm going to put in there real fast a picture that the Sandblaster has the water trap. It catches the water because these cylinders is just like a car cylinder. They're going up and down in there. The piston's just going up and down really fast in there. And it is creating a lot of heat. And that heat, when it goes through the lines coming out of it into the tank. See the line coming out of it into the tank? The line coming out of it into the tank. If you notice, this line right here is actually pretty decent size. You wonder why this has this big long ass line and then this got this tiny ass line. And look at this line. It got shielding on it and those don't. This is a cooling vent because this cools the hot air from this little piston before it drops into the tank. Isn't that cool? I mean, if you think of a still, how a still, the vapor that comes up has all the alcohol content, but it has water content also. So the still has to go through the coil and the water gets dripped out, which is your alcohol, and the steam dissipates into the water, and well, that's your alcohol, that's what you're drinking. Well, this steam right here cools down right here, so it cools the air, and there's vents in the bottom of all the tanks. There's vents in them which your water captures that you have to drain, so then this way that water doesn't get into your line. Well, this tries to cool the air to put the water in the tank before it gets to your line, but you still need something on the back end to get the water out the whole line. Well, these right here don't have that. These right here, all the water is sitting in the back of the tank, and you got to pull the plugs because you do get condensation because these cylinder heads run really hot. So that's why a lot of guys run the whole wall of copper pipe before it gets out. Now I got to pipe in my 220 in the garage. Now the 220 can actually reach all the way in here, and I will still get a decent, I'll get 90 psi in here and be able to run that nail gun all day long with the one in the garage to my house. Okay, but I don't feel that you need 3 or 4 10-foot copper pipes because you lose the temperature the further away from the compressor. Just like a still, the further away from it, your air cools when it's going through that pipe. So you do need some downspouts. So if you have the pipe a little bit raised up higher, the water flows backwards and it'll come into your traps on the back end before it goes to where you're going to drop it and need it. And when you drop it, you have a little opening on the bottom where you drain the water out of there, and then you could spray your stuff, but you still need something to catch it. Okay, now these right here, when you squeeze the trigger, constant air pressure. When you squeeze the trigger, constant air pressure. Squeeze the trigger, constant air pressure. Squeeze this, you get what I'm getting at here? Now, these ones right here are one shots. One shot, bam, one shot, bam. One shot on that trigger. So the difference is they're not taking the constant air pressure needed that the tools need. So what you're going to use it for is the compressor that you're going to need. This right here, I wouldn't even recommend at all. Scratch this out the equation. This right here, if you're doing one-shot wonders, you could use it with this one right here. This right here, you're doing one-shot wonders, you could use it right here. But these two right here, your one-shot wonder has to be within a certain radius. Now let me explain this to you. Radius means distance from this compressor. All of these right here are inferior compared to the 220 because the 220 outlet, the outlet of the 220 I got is 3/4 inch. I mean, it moves this much air through the pipe, and the copper piping is going to be 3/4 inch all the way to where I need it, then drop down into the 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch, whatever it's going to run for each gun. So it's going to give me the constant pressure and the total pressure that I need. Now if you're running, I got a line right here. If you're running all that line from any one of these compressors and you're trying to use an air gun, and I hate to say it, but I really do not recommend this because this right here isn't as good. You're not going to get the pressure needed in this to break the lug nut. There's a piston in here with a weight, and that's what breaks the lug nut. So if you're running one of these small compressors, even a sander, if you're running a sander, those two little ones, don't even try it. This one I wouldn't even try it. You're not going to get the pressure needed with the inferior air compressor. So if you're going to try to break a lug nut 25 feet away from your compressor, it's not going to happen. What I will use, and I stand by this sucker, this is the Craftsman impact gun, where I could take this outside, and this didn't even get all of them. This got 90% of the lug nuts broken I needed. This has it. This like, and this actually one tire that I needed, 2 of the lug nuts were so bad that I drained the battery, and I used the breaker bar to get the lug nuts, which that got it off. But this one right here is good to use, and that right there, that's the same thing with your impact guns. If you're gonna spend the money on an impact gun, spend your money on a good quality impact gun, because the weight inside there that's gonna hit that lug nut that you need has to be a better quality. I do stand by, man. I got an old Campbell Hosfield pot spray gun. I sprayed flake with it. I painted the hood of a car with it. I mean, I stand by the older Campbell Hosfield pot gun. Okay, so also with the DA sander, people say, "Why want to feel professional? I want to use a DA sander." If you got a 29 gallon or one of these, you cannot use a DA sander. Don't even try to use a DA sander with a smaller compressor. The 220 I got can use it. Now, also the same thing with a DA sander. There's house brand DA sanders, which are fairly cheap that you could pick up. But as to all the tools you need, what goes into the quality of them is how the air pressure is being utilized. Especially with that sandblaster. With the sandblaster I got, it is a Harbor Freight sandblaster. Even if you have this size compressor right here, you cannot run a sandblaster. This size compressor got 15 seconds of sandblasting with this size compressor. So even with this big, the medium-sized compressor, it cannot run a sandblaster. All right, I'm just trying to get this information out of here. So stuff like this with this DA sander, if you know, I want to look professional. And guess what? This Black & Decker has a smaller sanding pad, but this Black & Decker can run continuous. That one right there on any of these small compressors is going to drive you nuts because they're going to keep stopping to fill up, stopping to fill up, stopping to fill up. One of these cutoff tools. This is a cutoff tool, and you could use a body saw also. Any one of these compressors, you cannot use a cutoff tool, a body tool. You need, so that's what I'm saying, if you're going to buy a compressor, dude, get yourself a little credit card and only put that big compressor on the credit card and pay it off quick. Or if you're only using the one-shot wonders, get yourself a solid air compressor that's gonna handle that, that's gonna give you the true power. Now I got this bead blaster here. This bead blaster can use, you need a lot of PSI. Let's see what this bead blaster here. Maximum compressor 145 psi, operating pressure 85 to 160 psi or 116 psi. Now if you look at this, this goes by bars. There's 8 bar where I really try to be in order I'm gonna set a bead. Now this right here, you fill it in with this one and then you just pop this open and all the pressure comes out of this on the rim to set the bead. But let me tell you this, not one of these compressors, well maybe that one can, I never really tried that one to fill it all the way up. Can't fill this all the way to the green line. You'll be waiting 20 or 30 minutes just to get that filled to the pressure you need to set a bead. Okay, either one, even with this one, it'll fill up that tank right there with the low pressure really fast. I mean the low pressure, psh, not a problem. But to get up to the 90 to 116 psi, this one will probably take freaking half an hour, you know. This one will take a long ass time. This one I actually trust faster to fill the pressure, but the 220 line, you put it in within a minute, that's gonna have that one filled up. So I'm just trying to give you insights on it. And like I says, if you look at the cylinder heads, look at this cylinder head and that motor running, which does 300 this 125 psi 3 gallon vice that 115 psi 3 gallon. I mean, get a good look at the motor. I mean, that's a huge difference in motor and the cylinder head. Okay, now this one is a 29 gallon, and that cylinder head basically is that size but with bigger fins, and that right there motor is, I would venture to say they're the same size motors. Okay, that's Craftsman, and these are Harbor Freights right here. Now another thing is with these right here is the oil level. You see this oil needs to be cleaned. I'll show you the oil level in the 220, but that needs to be cleaned. That needs to be drained because these are pistons, just like a car, pistons that you need to change the oil. Now this one right here, the oil needs to be changed, but this one right here, I see no drain hole on this one at all. So this oil right here, if you take this off, you actually got to vacuum the oil out of here, suction it out of here, and then put the new oil. That right there is the breather. This is what sucks in the air. So you gotta suck the oil out of there and then put it back in, but this is where your air is being sucked in at. This is where the muffler goes. I have a muffler right here. This is supposed to muffle the sound, so it could go on this compressor right here or this compressor right here. And that right there is another thing that I'm watching guys do, is they're actually putting car mufflers attached to their air compressors, and it, oh my god, it really lessens the sound, because this one right here, painted in the basement, I had it in the basement, and to hear this little motor, because in order for these cheaper inferior compressors to catch up to a quality compressor, these motors are running at twice the speed, and it gives you the pressure that you need, vice a bigger motor with flywheel, and these are. So hopefully this gives you a little bit insight on your compressor. This is the video is gonna be like buying your first compressor. Watch this first. Save your money. Don't get these little cylinder head air compressors, because they're not worth the money. All right, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. Trev2323, TREV2323, Rob here. Subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. Bye bye. I know this is long one. If you followed it, there is a part 2 to it where I shoot a 220 compressor that I have and explain some stuff about that, about the sandblaster, and then you get to see it, me drain it, and it blow up all in my face. Talk to you later. Bye bye.